Good afternoon, beautiful people. I'm going to do tools of the trade this time because I need to take some rulers down for the retreat, and I was going to get in and sort of design something to take them in, and I went through the Biani patterns to see what I could sort of maybe hack a few together and make something, and I realized I had this. So I'm like, oh, that is perfect. So we'll do that one. All right, so I decided I needed the large, and so it is large. Okay, so I'll go through the components. So you're going to need 2 side strips out of your quilted pieces. This one is a padded sleeve. This is the base strip. Then you've got a pocket A and B. This one here is the flap. That's going to be the outside. And then I had this printed. This is actually WPC. It's waterproof. So that was super awesome. I'm super happy with how that turned out. And this is the bag front. And then the bag back. And then on top of that you have this one here, which I'm adding this. So I'm adding a second sleeve on the inside. And then we have the mesh. So you need to cut 2 pieces for a pocket C. And then you also need, out of your coordinating fabric, a fabric divider. And you're meant to have a mesh divider on top that goes on top of that there. I'm doing that, but I've cut mine bigger because it's meant to be just like a mesh strip that goes across, and then you sort of put divisions in it for whatever, you know, tools, sewing tools you want to slot into those sections. I'm adding this sleeve here because I want to carry my computer along with my rulers. So I'll put that in because I want it to go in behind that section. And then instead of the mesh sleeve, essentially, I'm going to do a mesh pocket on the front. So I will probably end up cutting this down though. I probably won't end up leaving it that wide. But I cut it that wide because I'm going to gather it on the sides and along the bottom to just give it a bit more body in the mesh side of it so it can sort of hold bulkier items. So I'll just see how it comes together as to whether I need to reduce that or not. And then you also need a stabilizer sleeve and front facing. Now there is in here so we have, this one is a flat border, okay, and then you're going to need side strip bindings, oops, that way, pocket A and B bindings, you need to cut 4 fairly big pieces for the handles, because they are really, really long handles on the large. You need a flap strap, padded sleeve binding, back binding, and then I cut another 2 pieces of binding because that mesh one I'm going to have a zipper, and I like to bind the top and bottom of the zipper when I apply it to mesh, so I had to cut an extra 2 pieces there. Then you need some fusible interfacing for the flat border. Now I'll be doing it a bit differently too, because this one has the sewing magnets and I don't use the sewing magnets, I use the pronged magnets. So I'll have to be interfacing, adding a bit more stabilizer to mine than what you normally would, and the facings and the borders and things like that on mine is going to be a bit different, but I'll show how to do it as per pattern and how I'm doing it also. So this is the front facing. This is the interfacing for the sleeve stabilizer. And lastly is the interfacing for the fabric divider. You also need binding, and it requires quite a bit of binding, so I do have another roller binding that I had to do, and I'm not 100% positive if I'm going to have enough, because I wasn't able to cut out the 3 big pieces needed. I didn't have enough of this, but I've ordered more and I should get it Monday. So worst case scenario is I just have to wait until Monday before I can finish it. Okay, this is the webbing I'm using for my handles. So there's a lot there. And this piece here will be used, it goes across the back of the bag just to give it a bit of stability, because it is they are very, very wide across the back. So this is the flap strap stabilizer, and then we need quite a bit of zip tape. So you have 2, that's for the sides that zip it up, and then I'm pretty sure these ones here are for the pockets. Well, that one there is for the big pocket, the mesh one that I'm adding in, and then these 2 here as well. And then as far as hardware goes, you want 2 triangle rings, you only needed 4 zip pulls for the original pattern, but with that mesh pocket I'm going to add another 2, because I'll probably end up not only gathering it up on the sides and along the bottom, but I'll probably end up dividing it too, because they're like really wide. So, and that will just give that pocket a bit more stability too if it's got weight in it. So I've got 6 there. And then, hang on a minute. And then I've got the 2 magnets I'm going to use. And instead of using 14 mils like I did on the Bowl Me Over, I'm using 18 mils this time. So they're just a little bit bigger. So I'm using 2 of those. I may end up adding a 3rd one, depending, because like I said, they are very wide. And yeah, I may end up adding one to the middle. I'll just want to see how the flap sits. and when it's done. Yeah, so we'll see as we go anyway. So there's 2 at least. All right, now if you're doing it per pattern, you would also need to add some fold over elastic for the mesh divider that goes inside it, but because I'm doing the zippered pocket, I don't need to add the mesh. Okay guys, so once you have all that together, you're going to get in and make your binding. Okay, and then what we want to do next is get all our pieces of interfacing here and just iron them down to the corresponding pieces that need to be stabilized. So we just done this stabilizer sleeve, the front facing, the big fabric divider, and the flat border with the stabilizer. Now the fabric divider and the front facing, those 2 need to be folded in half. And then you position the interfacing at the fold when you fuse that down. So that's on the fabric divider and the front facing as well. Okay. Next we want to take our piece for our flap strap and we're going to fold it right sides together, and then we're going to sew down there just like we would if we were doing straps. Sew down the long edge. Once we do that, we'll turn it right side out. Okay. While we're doing the once you do the flap strap piece, take your handles as well, and you need one of the long ones and the short ones, pair them together, and then we're going to sew a 1/2 inch like we have in, you know, other videos that we've done with the straps. Once you sew the 1/2 inch, press it open and then sew that down so it doesn't catch. Once I do it, I'll show you again, but you're going to press it open like that. And sew them down each side. Okay, and then sew them down each side. Then we will fold right sides together. After we do the seam on the flap strap, you want to iron the seam open and then turn it right side out. Then we will insert the flap strap stabilizer. So here's the stabilizer inside the flap strap. You want to leave a 1/2 inch at each end of the strap and then sew down all 4 sides. Then we can sit that aside. Next we're going to do the handles, and you want to take one of your long ones and one of your short ones and sew them together with a 1/2 inch seam. Iron the seam open and then sew down each edge. and that will stop it catching when you put the stabilizer inside. Then we want to sew the seam, press it open, do that on both, and then we're going to turn it right side out. So once you've turned your straps right side out, you want to go and insert the stabilizer, and then leave equal amount, it's about 1/2 inch of fabric at the end of each strap, and then just stitch all 4 sides. Do that on both. Then you just want to put on your triangle ring, and then I just put a wonder clip on the end, and I moved the triangle ring up to about half. I have no worries of it falling off, but I just put a clip on there just to make sure. So we're going to sit them aside now, and then we're going to move on to doing the pockets. Now we're going to do the pockets, and we want pocket A and B. There's pocket A, pocket B. We also want pocket A border. I'm not putting a border on mine because I didn't want to cover up the print, so I'm leaving the border off, and I decided to put a handmade badge on there. I would have liked rainbow since my other hardware's rainbow, but I didn't have one in this style, so it's a brass one instead. And we also want our AB binding, which is there, and on page 4 it's going to tell you the size of the zipper that we need, which I had. There it is, it's fell down. Had just there, and then a pull. Now on pocket A and page 5, oh, also remember guys, this is a pattern with 2 different sizings, so just remember that if you're doing the small, it's always the first lot of measurements, and the big one is the next one after in brackets. So make sure you follow the correct measurements for the correct size pattern that you're doing. Alright, so page 5, it wants you to mark a measurement from the top down, and then you're going to get your border. So you draw a line all the way across, and then get your border and place it below the line. Hang on a minute. Do a 1/4 inch seam along there, and then iron it up like that, and then just sew 1/8 all the way around to attach it. Next up, we're going to put our zipper on. So lay your zipper, what's that, right side down, and sew a generous 1/4 inch all the way across to attach it. Once you sew the zipper down, then we want to flip it and press it down. Give it a good press. Just to get it conforming a bit. And then we want to go to the machine and be mindful your thread is going to show on here. Go to the machine and sew that down to enclose all the raw edges here. Zipper sewn down. Then on page 5 you got to look, and there's a measurement. You need to measure your pocket from the top of the zipper down, and then trim the pocket to the height that it says. Now it says to put the zip pull on now, but I tend to wait. I'm just going to see something here, because what we're next going to do is put pocket A on top of pocket B, just like that. Line it up, the edge of the zip tape with the top of the pocket. We're going to stitch that down. Yep, okay, so we've got to stitch all 4 sides. So I will put the pull on now. I'll just grab my other scissors. What I do is I separate, sorry for bonking you guys. I separate my tape, and then I take an old pair of scissors and I just nip out 2 teeth, okay, on an angle. And then put it in just a little bit. Where's my stiletto? There it is. You want to put the edge in just a little bit here, okay? Put the edge in just a little bit, probably about halfway. Let me see if I can, yeah, about like that. All right, that's a good angle. So put it in halfway, and then we're going to put the other side in. If you put it in too far, that's when you can't get it on properly, because the teeth are too far in this part of the head of the zipper. Pull. And we'll take it, put it in a little bit, hold it with these fingers and my thumb, bring this one around, pop it in, then I put it down on a firm surface. And hold it either side, the tape either side, and push from the back. You need a firm surface with your tape. And then I usually put my fingers, as you want to apply the pressure to the tape for the pull to come on. Okay, we'll move it in, get our pocket A, B back, put pocket A on the top. Take it to the machine, have these all lined up, your edges, your tape lined up to the top, and then stitch 1/8 around all 4 sides. I'm just going to stick a few wonder clips on this, just to hold it in place a little bit better. Alrighty, we'll go and stitch that down all the way around. Pocket is all stitched down. And just check it when you finish that you caught it all. Sometimes when you sew down, the top piece may shift a bit and overextend the bottom. So you just want to check when you finish that you did catch all of the edging. Now we're just going to trim the tape so it's level. Now we want to take one of the AB binding, and what I did is I folded it in half and I ironed it to give me a good crease, and then I opened it out and I just put a piece of double-sided tape either side of my crease, and then I folded each side in and then just fold it in half, and that's how I'm going to bind the top of that zipper. So I'll put it over, I'll put some wonder clips down, and I'll sew both sides down at one time. Sugar, I'm knocking you guys around everywhere tonight. So what I do is I make sure the top there is in that crease really well, like that. And then that way you're going to get even on each side. And then when you sew it down, it's going to catch the lot and it's going to give you a nice, clean, crisp stitch all the way down. All bound down. I did go a wee bit wonky along there, but it's all good. I'm not overly worried about it. Next up on page 5, there's a measurement, and we want to measure from the edge in and then mark it, and then connect that point to this bottom corner and draw a line up there. And do the same on the other side. Measure in, connect, and then do our line. And what I did is I drew the line just there, and then I sewed 1/8 in. Make sure you do it on the inside of the line, because we want to go and cut along that line now and cut that off. make sure you have your pull within this section here. So we're not going to go and, you know, nick it off. Hey, you pair. No fighting. You are cutting through a lot of layers here, everyone, so it's going to be a bit thick. And there we have our pocket AB. And this is going to end up being our zippered pocket on the front, as well as our slip pocket. It's going to be beautiful. Now we want to just sit that one aside. Next up, we want to do pocket C. And that is your longest zipper, as well as your pocket C1 and C2. So if you made it mesh, it'll be your mesh, or you could have made it fabric if you had wanted to. I need to stop bonking you lot. And then what we want to do is attach the zipper to the mesh. Now, it depends on how you want to do it. So some people will do it where you do it like that. You sew it down. Hang on a minute. So like this. You have your zipper like that. And you put your mesh down. And you put it on this part of the zipper, not this side, and then you stitch along there, and then you can fold it back that way and top stitch it. So that's how some people do it. The way I do it is, that's why I cut the extra pieces of binding. So what I'll do is I'll go to the iron and I will fold this in half and I'll press it. And then I will do again my pieces of double-sided tape either side of the line, like I did for the binding on the AB pocket. And then what I'll do is, once I have it folded, I will put the mesh inside that and sew it down like I did with the other pocket. So we'll go and attach our zipper, and once you attach it to C1, then you want to attach it to C2. So I'll go and fix this binding so it's prepared, and then I'll put it onto the mesh, and I'll show you the steps as I do it, and then I will sew it down onto the zipper like so. So on my binding for my mesh pockets, as you can see, I fold it in half, I iron it to get my center crease, and then I put a piece of double-sided tape either side of it. and then I fold each edge in, and then hit it with the iron real quick again just to reinforce that crease there. And then I just take my mesh and pop it inside. And then sew it as one, and then you'll get a beautiful stitch here and the same on the back. And I find that gives a neater finish than binding it in the traditional way. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew C1 down, and then I'll take my other piece and I'll sew it to one of the longest edges on C2, and then I will take that, but I'll show you again when I do it, and I will attach that to my zip tape like so with the mesh in. Keep a check with your mesh that it is right up to the crease when you're sewing this down, and also that the top panel is in line with the bottom. And take your time, don't rush it. You'll end up with a beautiful finish, but don't go like a bull out of gate. Like that. This is a very touchy pedal, and I'm still getting used to it. And there you go, guys. Hang on a minute. And if you look, you can see that they're in line with each other. And now all we need to do is attach that to the zipper tape. So we just lay it down on top. Now I will go and put a piece of double-sided tape on this, and I'll run it along here. What I'll do is I'll keep it above that line. When you look at your tape, it sort of has a different weave here. There's like maybe not even an 8, but maybe an 8 down there. So I'll keep it above that, but below where I'm going to run my top line of stitching here. And then that way it's in between the two lines of stitching that I'm going to put, so I'm not going to gum up my needle. It's pretty good. It's very thin, and it doesn't really put anything on the needle. Like, there's a tiny bit there. Tiny little bit. You know, so it's not really anything much. And I just keep a packet of alcohol swabs. Brilliant for cleaning that if you need to clean it. So I'll just get in and run the double-sided tape on here now, and I'll put one side on at a time, And what I'll do is I will sew all 4 edges. Okay, so I'll stick it on and I'll sew the top, and I'll come down and I'll follow this line of stitching here again and stitch it down, and I'll do that on the top and the bottom piece. And that is how I do the mesh onto zippers, because in my opinion it just makes working with this so much more pleasurable. If you've ever tried to sew mesh to a zipper, it's not the most cooperative stuff, and this just makes it a dream. You know, you just seen how easy it was for me to slot that inside my binding. Very quick sew. Yes, take it slow when you sew it, but in my opinion it's quicker to sew. You're doing 2 steps, so it might take a fraction more time, but the end result, neatness, presentation and efficiency, to me, doing it this way is better than just attaching the zipper tape to the mesh. You see, this is what I was meaning. I thought I'd grab a piece of the tape and show you. You see how you can keep it in the middle? And then it's not going to affect your needle either way. And this is the 1/4 inch tape, but you can get the 1/8. So, you know, there's quite the difference there. So if you didn't want to use this one here is still sufficient enough to attach it to your zipper. It wouldn't hold it in place as well. You'd have to go a bit slower using this one because you don't have the coverage of the slightly thicker stuff. There you go, you see what I mean? Here is the mesh pocket all done. All sewn down, top and bottom. So we can sit that one aside for now. Next up, what we're going to do is the sleeve. So we need the padded sleeve, the fabric divider, you need the mesh and your fold over elastic if you're just doing the mesh divider. I said in the beginning I'm doing mine a bit different because I'm wanting to do a pocket. So what I done is I attached the zipper to mine, and with your fabric divider you want to have it right sides together and just sew a 1/4 inch seam along the bottom, then turn it out the right way like it is now. Give it a good iron to really get that good crease in there where the seam is, and then you want to stitch all 4 edges, but you do 1/8 on the sides. When you get down to where you done your seam, you do a 1/4 inch all the way along the bottom, and then 1/8 up here and 1/8 across the top. If you're doing the mesh divider like in the pattern, then you just want to go ahead and put the fold over elastic on the top and bottom long edges. Okay, so long edges. So if your mesh is laid out like that, you want to bind the bottom edge and the top edge here. Yours won't be this wide. Mine's only that wide because I'm changing it up a bit. So on the pattern, with our fabric divider, it wants us to mark a certain distance down, from the top down and from the bottom up, all the way across. And that is the placement guide for the fabric, for the mesh divider. You see the marks there? Now I only put a couple because of the fact that I won't be using them because I'm doing the pocket, but I put them there to show you guys. And also it wants us to mark measurements in from each side at different intervals. Now I didn't do that also for the expressed reason. These measurements are on page 6 and 7. I didn't do them because they're going to be different for everybody depending on, you know, what you want to put there. Essentially it's a lot like the A Place for Everything and Running with Scissors. You know, you might want to put a rotary cutter there. You may want some scissors, a couple of different markers, you know, so you need to figure out what you want and then mark your points so you can then sew your mesh divider down. And what you want to do is, once you mark your points, put your mesh divider on, sew each side, and then sew your divisions, but start at the bottom, sew up, to pivot, and sew back down again, and then do the next one. But remember to leave the top and bottom between your divisions open. You know, you don't want to sew the bottom shut. Alright, so that's for that part. Now, with the way I'm doing it, I'm putting that down. And the thing is, with this padded sleeve, I've changed it quite a bit because I want to carry my laptop in this bag also for my trip down to Victoria for the sewing retreat that I'm doing. So I added another padded sleeve here because in the pattern you would only have that one, and then this would go down, and then your mesh divider. So I didn't want just a piece of material here holding my laptop in here. So I'm putting this down. Don't you love it? Now this, I had it printed, and that's waterproof material this is. So I'm absolutely loving that. So I'm going to put that down like that. Then the mesh divider on the top. Sorry, the fabric divider. Then my mesh pocket will go on there. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap at the top because I want to be able to... do I want to see that? No, I think I might just sew it straight to the top. I was going to leave a little bit of a gap so I could see that, you know, so it looks pretty going through the different layers, 1, 2, 3, 4. But I think I'll just take it and sew it to the top of the fabric, and then I'm going to gather the sides here. That's why I didn't trim it. And I'm going to like put some pleats along the bottom because I want it to have, like, the mesh has give anyway, but I want it to have more give in there for bulkier items. So I'll go and sew these two down, And if you're just doing the mesh divider, you need to go and sew that now, and then we will attach them to the padded sleeve. And I also need to measure how wide I need to make the division here for my laptop, and whether or not I want that division to carry through onto this, because if I don't, then I would sew that division in first before I put this down. But I am going to divide this pocket, so I think once I take into account seam allowance, binding, etc. down the side, I'm thinking my laptop would come to about there. Oh, I'll get it. Yeah. Yeah, so I was about right. Yeah, so I might have the pocket a bit more central, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to sew this padded sleeve down to the original padded sleeve, mark in the divider for my laptop. Yeah. I might mark in a few other dividers there. And I may divide this more than 2 times, because by putting this on, I am losing the benefit of the fabric divider with as many divisions as what you would have with the mesh divider. So I may put a couple of divisions in this padded part here, and I might possibly put another pull on this so I can have 3 sections. I want to lay some things out in here and see how much room they're going to need. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to put another pull on this, and I'm going to have it divided 3 times. So I'll go and do that, and then we'll come back. So I've got it on, and I bound the top there, I bound the bottom, because otherwise it would have been a raw edge. And then I put the sleeve, the extra one that I made, is now on top of the padded sleeve. So on page 7, there's a measurement where it wants you to measure down from the top and then up from the bottom. I'll see if you see there? That is your placement lines for this part to go on top of the sleeve. And we'll clip that down. Now there's also some other division measurements there, but I didn't bother actually putting them in because they're ones that you customize again, the same as on the mesh divider. And I plan on having mine wider, like I said, for the laptop, but I've had to cut a few extra pieces of material that wasn't in the actual pattern because I added this extra part here. So I had to do the binding here, and then with the pocket I done these 2 strips of binding here as well as this one here. So that is on. And we just want to sew down the edges on each end and then do your divisions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my computer in there. Because I was thinking about it, and even though it is a certain width, if I had to put the division in for that width, it would not have fitted, because you got to take into account the depth of this. So this is 10.25 or 10.5 inches. So if I had done it, say, at 10.75, I feel it still would not have fitted. Let me, where did my measure go? There. Yeah, see, that's at 11 now. So, you know, to be able to get it in and out, like I want it to be stable, of course, but to be able to get it in and out, I think I would have to put the division probably at about here, I would say. And then that will push that down there, and that will make it a nice snug fit so that baby's not going anywhere. So I'm going to get in now and sew down my sides, each end. Then I'll do my division. Then I'll do my other division over here. I think that's, oh, that's another thing I want to show you guys too, is this nifty diffy little pencil. I don't know if I've showed you before, but it's a wax pencil, wax chalk pencil. And this here is how you sharpen it. So you just pull that up and it cuts through the paper there, and you twist it off and it will reveal a bit more of the end. But it comes off with an iron. So you can put your marks down, and then when you want to remove them, you just use an iron and that totally comes off. I first originally started using these when I was painting. I do painting on fabric, so I'd use this to draw the design in, and then I paint the fabric, and then I get in and do a lot of free motion quilting on the design, and this was absolutely brilliant for that. I just got them off of eBay, and it doesn't really have a name, but if I can find the link and figure out how to put the link in the description for it to actually work, I will do that for you guys, because I've put links in lately, but they're not, for some unknown reason, they're not actually showing up where you can actually click them. So I'll have to look into that. Alrighty, I'll do that, guys. Here it is, all sewn down. And I've got my divider here and here. And then there's this divider here, there, as well as the pockets. I actually moved my sleeve section up a bit because it was meant to be closer down to the bottom here, but I just wanted it up a bit more because I felt having it that much higher would give the laptop a bit more stability than having it, you know, further down. So that one is done. All we need to do now is just bind the bottom and top edge, and then we can set this little beauty aside So we'll bind that edge now. Hey guys, I just thought I'd show again how I do my binding. So, oh, sorry, bonking yous. I fold it in half and I iron it to get my center crease. And then I open it out and I put 2 rows of double-sided tape either side of the crease. Then I peel, okay, see if I can get it all in the frame because it is a long piece. All right, so then I peel about that much off and I stick one side down and then I do the other, and then I'll peel more and then I go in and stick part of this one, part of that one, and keep going until it's fully done. You can see. So once that's done, then I put it like that. You know, obviously this part will be up there, but just as an example. And I'll fold it up and I'll clip it in place. So I put that center here. Don't put it down and bring the edge of this right over to this center, because then there's going to be more on the back than there is on the front, because you've got to take into account the thickness here. So I get the crease and I bring it over and I line it up with the center of this here. Then I'll put clips on it to hold it in place, and then I'll take it to my machine and I'll just stitch straight down. And then it's just one line of stitching. You're catching the front and the back in the same, and it looks quite good. Well, that's my opinion. And I do the same with my zip tape there. So I fold it over the zipper tape, exactly the same as what I showed you just then, and I stitch it down. But with this one I do 2 rows of stitching. So I'll do the top and then I do the end and then I come along the bottom, and then that just secures it and you're not got floppy, you know, ugly looking binding there. Alrighty, back to it. Here we go, all done. Look at that. I'm super happy with it. So now we can set that aside. Next up we're going to do the flap. So for this one you're going to want the flap. You're going to want your magnets. I do the lug magnets, not the sew-in ones. Then you're going to need some fusible interfacing to go over your magnets to stop them from wearing through your fabric. Your flap facing, your flap border, the circular ruler for curving the corners, and our bias binding. And first up, what we want to do is put on page 8, there's a measurement from the bottom up, and we want to put that all the way across. And if you have directional fabric, put a pin or something to mark which side's up. And then on the top, we also want to measure from the top down and draw a line all the way across. So this is for our strap when we sew this down to the body, and this here is for our border facing. Then we want to flip it over And on the top, you want to measure from the top down, draw a line all the way across. I didn't, I just drew a little bit where it needed to be. And then on the bottom up, you need to draw a line all the way across. And that's for your facing placement. And this one up here is for your magnets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around. All right. So this is the edge here, which is the top for our magnets. And next we want to measure from the side in, and there's 2 measurements. Now remember, this is in 2 sizes, so make sure you get the correct measurement for the size that you're making. All right, the 2 lines we just did, they're the same size no matter whether it's the small or the large. But these next marks here for our magnets do change depending on the size of the bag. My magnets aren't as big as what the sewing magnets are, so I just had to alter my measurements a little bit to accommodate the fact that mine aren't as big. So I done mine here, and I just made the square. I didn't bother with the lines, you know, all the way across and then up and down and everything. It's just more you got to remove in the long run. So we'll mark the 2 in. So there's one measurement, then there's another measurement, and you want to do that on both ends. All right. So you see. So if you're doing the sewing ones, go ahead and sew them in now. Because I'm doing the lug, I'm just going to put one of my little washers down like that. And then I can get the correct placement for the lines. And then I'll do it on this side as well. So I'll go ahead and insert them, and I'll use my extra stabilizer as well. I'm going to use it on the bottom, and then when I put them in, I'll put another piece over the top. Both the magnets are in. And another good little trick too is if you don't have a utility knife to make your little cuts, if you happen to be doing the lug ones and not the sew-in, you can always use old Jack and just use that to make your little cuts. Works really well. Next we want to put on the facing. So on this side you want to get your facing, make sure it's on the bottom, and lay it down just above, pretty much on that line that we drew all the way across there. And then go and sew that down with a 1/4 inch. Once that's sewn down, we're then going to fold it towards the bottom of the flap, and then we'll just stitch around the edge. After that, we will use our circular ruler to mark I'll draw a line on there, and then I'll stitch just inside that line, and then I'll trim it. There we have it. The facing is on, so it's covered up the back of the magnets nicely. There's the beautiful magnets on there. And what I did is I curved the corners there. So I'll get in and trim that off because I've already sewn it. Don't know if you can see the line of stitching just there. One, there's the second one. So your flap should be looking like that now. All that's left to do is bind that with the bias binding, and then we'll sit that one aside for now. I forgot to show sewing this down on the other side, as a viewer subscriber requested that we show the binding. So I will show actually binding other parts too, but this is the flap. So I've sewn it to the back side. Now I'm bringing it to the front. And I just go slow, guys. There's no rush. I can see my sew line here. Is here. So I just make sure I bring it over and it lands just past. That's it there. And I bring it over so it's just lands just on the other side of that stitch line. There's the flap totally bound. So we can sit that one aside. Next up we want side strip, base strip, your two zippers for the length of your project, and you also want the base stabilizer sleeve. So we'll sit the stabilizer sleeve and the base just to the side for the moment. Zipper tape. With your two side strips, if they're a directional, make sure, or a pattern, make sure they're going the way you want them to go. Okay? That one's that way, that one's that way. Next, what you want to do is in from the middle, in. Depending on what size you're doing, it will have a measurement. Whoop. So you mark in, and then connect that mark all the way down to this corner on that diagonal. with the opposite side, reverse it. So you're going from this point in and then you're traveling all the way down to there. And we want to cut that off so we can put the zippers on. So that's how they should look once they've been trimmed. Then we want to take our zipper let it go past the end by a little bit. Lay it up there. When we stitch it down, we want to start stitching about a 1/4 inch from the top. Oop. So don't start your stitching right here, okay, where the edge is there. So we'll start stitching probably about here when you sew it down, and then sew it down like you would normally a zipper. So you have right sides together, and then we'll stitch that down. We'll open it out, moving that to the back, push it all down, and then stitch that again. Be mindful that your bobbin will show through on the front. There's the zipper sewn down. Then what we want to do is, make sure you have your pulls on too, everyone. Make sure you put your pulley on. And what you want to do is separate your zipper tape. Make sure when you sew your zipper on that you did stop the 1/4 inch down, and you start your sewing from there down. So this is all on page 9 in the book, in your pattern. So you sew from 1/4 inch down, and once you've sewn your zipper down and go to the front, separate your tape a bit, and then you want to get your tape and just bring it to the front at a 45-degree angle, just like that. See what I did? I just folded it, and then what I did is I used my stiletto and I put it between the side strip and the zipper, and I just pull it out like that to get the nice angle on it. See, nice crisp angle. Now if I put a pin in that, because the pin will allow me to fold it better than a clip for you guys to see. Okay, so there's the pin. Now if I turn it to the lining side, because once we sew that down there, then we turn to the lining side to fold it over again, and you'll see you've got a nice crease there. 45-degree angle. So we'll go and we'll sew that now. So you just sew straight across the top and then go to the lining, sew it again. And it will look like that. Once we've done both sides, what you want to do next is trim up the zipper tape. So take your ruler, align it. I keep losing my things. Here we go. You want to align the edge of your ruler with this edge here. Keep it on that angle and just cut that off. And then go to the top. Do the same, keep it aligned with the side here. And snip that off. So lastly, we just need to trim this part of the zipper tape. So we have our tape flat. Get a ruler and align this edge, the short edge of your ruler, with the edge of the side strip, and the top edge with the edge of your teeth up here. Let me just find my rotary cutter. Have that aligned and then just trim it off. Lastly, all we need to do is measure. Now on page 10 it'll show a measurement and you need to measure. These pieces are so big. There we go, that's better. I'll zoom out a little bit. You need to measure the width of the bottom here. There's two measurements, of course, one for the small, one for the large. Make sure you get the correct measurement for the size that you're making. Measure it. If it's wider, you need to trim it. So mine isn't. If it happens to be wider, all you need to do is mark where it should be. And then with your ruler, get it on that mark and align it, to the angle. So say I needed to take off this much here, this much. So I would put my ruler there. I would follow it down until it become flush with the edge as I went down the side strip. So like that, and then you just trim it up like that. All right. So once all that's done, we're going to sit that over there for a quick hot minute. And then you need your stabilizer sleeve and just fold the edge under a 1/4 inch and then fold it again 1/4 inch, and then just sew the edges down. Do that on both ends. Then you want to put that on your base. On page 10 there's a measurement you need to mark on each end. And align the stabilizer sleeve between those two marks. Then we're just going to stitch 1/8 all the way up the edge on both sides. Don't stitch across here, just stitch the two sides. There we have it sewn down. I didn't bother changing out my cotton because this will be in the seam anyway and hidden. So it's all down. Next we want to take our side strips and right sides together, line them up, take the other end, just put a clip in, so it should look like that. And then we want to sew 1/4 inch seam across. So when we put the side strip onto the base strip, just sew your 1/4 inch seam. Then we're going to take our side strip binding, we're going to fold it in half. Oh. And on the zipper side of our side strip, I'm going to put it down. Then we're going to sew 1/4 inch seam, 1/8 and 3/8 along there. It will look like this. Once we've done that on both ends, we'll lay it out. And that will fold over like that, and then we just stitch along this edge to sew it down. We'll do that on both ends. Here we have the side strip totally done. Both bindings are down. Now what we need to do is just bring the edges over and line up those two seams so we can find our middle, and then just mark the middle. So either a pen or a marker, that won't go away. Don't use an air erase because it'll probably go away before we get back to it. So you want to just put your two marks there for the center. Then we can put that aside for the moment. Next up, we are going to need our bag front, And we're on page 11 now. We're going to need our magnets, stabilizer for the backs there, our facing, we'll need the AB pocket, we'll need pocket C, which is the big mesh one we made, and one handle, as well as circular ruler of the size that is mentioned. So this here we'll just put away for the time being. And what we want to do is on the top of our bag, on page 11, there's a measurement we need to put a line from side to side, from the top down, and then another one. And then there's 2 measurements to measure in, and that is to give us our placement for our magnets. There's mine just there. I didn't bother drawing the line all the way across. I didn't see the need to do that, so I just drew my horizontal, then I done my 2 vertical, and I put my little washer down and marked the 2 openings, and I put the same for here, so that is all marked. Then if you have directional fabric, make sure you know which way is up. So we then want to flip it over, and there is another measurement down the bottom that will measure from the top down. And put our marks in. And this is to put down the facing to cover the backs of our magnets. Now, if you're using the sew-in magnets, you would have it for the front. It would go on the front of the bag. Hang on. No, yeah, it would go on the back. No, the front. So I've got to do mine on the back, but yours would be on the front if you're doing the sew-in. So I will get in and attach those now. Both the magnets are in. So I'm going to flip it over and just put the facing down just to cover up the 2 protective stabilizers there. And the way we do that, even if it's on the front, it's the same method. You want to grab it and lay your raw edges along the line that we drew. And then we'll sew a 1/4 inch. Once we sew the 1/4 inch, we want to iron it up. Then we'll just stitch down the top. Facing is all sewn down nicely. Next, we want to flip it to the main fabric side. And on page 12 there's quite a few measurements. You want to measure in I'll move you guys up this way, hoping you can see it. You want to measure from the outside in, put your mark, do the same on the opposite side. Then you have a measurement down the bottom, and you want to connect those 2 points. You want to do the same on that side there and connect them up. There's also measurements that we need to do from the bottom up, and there are 3 on the right hand side. These 2 here are going to be for our X for the handle, and this one here shows where we need to position the triangle ring. On the left hand side we only have 2, which are for the X on our handle. Once we do that, we want to grab our pocket and put it down, position it equal distance between that diagonal line that we marked along the bottom there. Then just clip it. We want to go to the machine. We'll start here and we'll stitch down 3 edges on the pocket. Here we go, guys. Pocket is on. I'm getting very excited because we're getting there. We are finally starting to see the end of this. Now what we need to do is put our handles down, and the edge of your handle here, you want it with that angled line we had to draw. So your handle fabric will hang over a little bit on the end there. And then we're going to have to pin it because we can't stick clips up there. It's so thick. Yeah, I think I'll just put it where it needs to be as I sew, I think. So we bring our triangle ring down. We need to position that between the bottom 2 lines there. And then this line here, the second line and the top line, this is where we do our box with the X. So we will stitch from the bottom up one side, up to our top mark, go across, then I'll do my X and my box, and then we'll come back down the opposite side. We'll do the same on the left. There's no triangle ring there though on that one. So with putting your handle down, just follow it around like that, so you know it's not twisted, and make sure you have it with the seam down. You don't want the seam up. Okay, so the seam on the underside there, we want it facing down. Go. So we'll go ahead and we'll stitch that down, and that side only has the 2 lines to show us where to put our box on. There we go, guys, all down. Went down beautifully. One thing I will say though is when you get to the triangle ring, you can't actually sew across it. So what I did is I came up to the line and I backstitched, and then I just jumped it and started again where the next line was. So that little piece there isn't sewn, so this can move up and down, and I just done my X. And then when I came back down the other side, I jumped it again, and then I just snipped the thread. So we have our slip and our zip in there. So that is that part done. All we need to do now is just trim the excess fabric off here. So I'll flip it over, make it easier to trim it. Got to get my other one. There we go. So the only thing left to do now with the front is to attach the mesh pocket. So what I would do is I would tuck this handle into the pocket here, like that. And we just need to lay our pocket down. And go and stitch all 4 edges. All 4 edges of this, and then that will be the front of the bag finished. There we go. Mesh is all sewn down. Very big pocket though. It's huge on this large one. It's really, really big. So the only thing left to do on this bag now, on this front piece, is trim the mesh. So the overhang on here, need to trim it off. So the best way to do that is to flip it over so the mesh is on the bottom, and then trim it from the top. So then once that's done, we need to just mark the center. So just fold your bag or measure and then just mark in your center there. And lastly is just round our corners. So I'll round those as soon as I trim the mesh here. And then we can sit this one aside. Next we're onto the bag back. And for that we need the bag back, our padded sleeve, which I'll put there, our bag back binding, the handle, and your page strap. Sorry, flap strap, not page strap, flap strap. So on the main side, we need to measure down and draw a line all the way across. For some reason my pen didn't want to work, so it's not showing up too well, even though I did use black. So there it is, all the way across. Then measure in from the side and put a marker. Do that on both sides on the top. Both ends on the bottom. Measure in. And these measurements you'll find on page 13. Then we want to connect that point with that point like we did on the front with our diagonal line. Can you see it there? Running up here. This fabric's hard to make it so you guys can see it. Once we do that on both sides, then it is to mark the X placement lines, the section where we do our X on our strap. So they are there. So you need to measure up. You got 1 measurement, 2 measurement, 3 measurements on the right hand side, and only the 2 on the left hand side, because the left hand side doesn't have the triangle ring. Then we will flip it over, and on the lining side need to measure down and draw a line all the way across. I just put some dashes. Then measure up from the bottom and draw your line across also. This is the placement lines for our padded sleeve. So these are the marks that's going to show us where to put the padded sleeve. So first up we want to bind the top with our binding. So we'll do that. One thing I wanted to say, guys, was when you round your corners, make sure you're rounding the correct end, okay? So when you go mark it and everything, like, just make sure you're doing it on the bottom and not on the top. So with the binding on the back, I just thought I'd show again what I'm going to do. With it being straight binding, I find a nicer result is I fold my fabric in half and I hit it with the iron to get a good crease here. Then I open it out and I fold each edge in to that crease. And then I iron it again. And this is what I do with my mesh and my vinyl if I'm doing mesh and vinyl pockets. And then I put like this. Okay, just like that, and sew it down. I do the same with the mesh. I insert it into there, I fold it, I'll stitch it down, and I'll just stitch it along the bottom. Then I'll do is I will take the zipper tape, hang on a second. So yeah, this is what I do. Sorry, not that. This is what I do with the mesh and the vinyl. So just pretend this is mesh or vinyl. You put it in and then just sew along the bottom. Once that's done, to attach it to the tape, I just place it on the top. Follow the same line of stitching that I did previously to attach it to the mesh, and that attaches it to the bottom of the zip tape. And as you come along, you just come up and then come along the top. That gives you a nice square of stitching. Let me see. Yep, here. You see? One, it makes it easier to attach the mesh, because mesh is not the nicest thing to have to sew with. You could probably all agree on that. And I think it just gives a nicer look. You know, some of the binding, because I put extra binding in, it's not included in the pattern, so I've got to pre-think it and cut it. But to me, I like the look of that than just the straight zip tape, even though I picked the fluoro orange zip tape to match the binding. That just sets it off even more, I think, having the binding. And if you have a look on all my videos, that's how I've done all of them. It just adds a nicer touch, in my opinion. It really does. But anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this over there like that. I'll just use a few wonder clips to go along and hold it, and then I'll get in and I'll stitch it down. Binding is all done. Now what we want to do is take the strap and align it along that line that we had to mark from the top down. Stitch down the side and across the bottom and up the opposite side. So I'll just clip that. Where'd my clip go? So we lay it just above that line. So I'm going to line mine up with that line. All the way across. To this edge. And then sew up this side. Do not sew across the top. Only sew the 3 edges. This part here we will sew later when we attach the flap, okay? Strap is all sewn down. It's down that side there, along the bottom. And sewn up this side here, open across the top there. Once you've finished that, we want to go ahead and put the strap on, and we'll do it the same as we did the front. You up one side, do your X, come down the opposite side. I'm thinking, I won't know until I use it, but I'm thinking there's really not going to be any need for the triangle. But, you know, I'll know at the end. So once the straps are done, then we want to flip to the lining. Then position the sleeve between the two measurements we had here. Then stitch down the edge and up the other side. Do not stitch the bottom, don't stitch the top. Leave them open so we can see right through. Last thing left to do with the back is just to mark our center and round the corners. Make sure you only round the bottom corners on the bottom of the bag. Next up, we're going to attach the side strip / base strip with our bag front. Okay, bag front. So what we want to do is lining sides together. What I did is I joined my two marked middles and I put one clip there, then I put a clip either side. Then I went to the corner and I clipped the tape. Did the same with the opposite corner. And then I just clipped the rest of it. So I'm going to get in and sew that down. So yeah, it all went down really, really well. So now what we want to do is bind it. So I've pinned the side strip pieces towards the middle and undid the zipper. And then with the bias binding, I'm going to pin the tail there, but I'm going to actually start my stitching over towards this corner. And that will give me plenty of tail in which when I come around, I've got plenty of give there, so I can manipulate the bag to do the joining, which I'll show you guys how I do my joins as well. And I'm going to videotape some of this bias binding sewing because a subscriber has requested that, so I'll be videotaping some of this also. So I just started the binding just back there a bit, and because we want to miter our corner, we need to stop 1/4 inch back from the edge here. There, that might be a bit better for you guys. So I'm going to stop my sewing here where I'll mark the 1/4 inch. So what we want to do is, once we stop the 1/4 inch, I use my stiletto on the angle. I fold the binding up. So it is straight, and then fold it down. So put your stiletto there at the top, level with this part here, this top edge here, to get the good corner. and turn it around, which it's easy to do, but I chose to do the large bag and it's very bulky. So I make sure that is pulled over level. Back stitch. And then continue sewing down. Which is a lot of bulk. I think I'm going to have fun when I come to the back bit with adding that extra padded sleeve that I added in. But we will see. And once we've sewn the binding all the way around on our project and we're back to where we left our loose tail, so I always leave a generous amount unsewn if possible to just make the joining easier. So here we are here. That is the excess binding. And how you know where to cut it is you cut it off depending on your width. So if your binding is 2 1/4 inches wide, you overlap and you measure 2 1/4 and then you cut it. If it's 1 inch, you overlap at 1 inch, then you cut it. So we've just cut that. We can move that out of the way. The next best way that I find easiest to remember on how to join, I'm going to have to fold this project up, so just excuse me for a minute. So I just had to clip it up to give me that bit of free movable space here. So here we have our two ends, and how I remember how to join is I place it on there so it's across, and then I open this out. I open this piece out, and there you have it. And if it makes your life easier and don't feel silly for doing it, I do it all the time. Even given the amount that I have joined binding with doing quilts and everything else, I still find I just can't never get it quite right. So I stick a pin in, I'll lay it on a flat surface like that. I'll take my ruler and my pen, I will connect the two corners, and then I draw a line like so. Go to the machine, sew that, cut this off, leaving, a bit for your seam, and then that will fold out beautifully. And one way to check that it will is you stick a pin along there like that. Grab another one. It's gone a bit off center, but should still work. And then there you have it. Beautiful join. You won't see this or anything. It moved when I was pinning it, so but you get the idea there, and that is how you join. That's exactly how I remember how to do it, otherwise I'd forget. So I've just sort of always done it that way, and I thought maybe that might help others remember how to join your binding. Now that we've finished attaching the binding to one part of the bag, we're onto the next part of sealing it down, either the front or the back, depending on how you've put it on originally. Few things I sort of can maybe point out that could be helpful. One, go slow. You know, it's not a race. Go slow. Take your time. Other than that, one other thing I like to be mindful of is a stiletto is your best friend. It doesn't have to be by anyone. I have others. Actually, I'll get it. This one here. You know, just something pointy. It's your best friend. And another thing is be mindful. Let me see if I can zoom you guys in. I'm not sure. Try and get light from my light here, but not directly on it, because otherwise that obscures what I'm trying to show you. Be mindful of your stitch line there. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that that falls just to the other side. Now if it happens to be tight, like it's going to be when it gets around to the bottom part of the bag here, it's going to be tighter. Pull it, it'll stretch. That's the beauty of it. Make it go, you know, pull it right over if you have to. You see, I can pull it quite a way over if I need to, or I can have it here. So you make it go. If another thing I think plays a big role with binding is how you've put it on originally. So if you've put it on here and you have not been consistent in the width, oh sorry guys, your width here, you know, if sometimes you're at like just under 1/4 of an inch, and then other times you're over 1/4 of an inch, and then, you know, other times you might be like here 1/8, you know, that will play a big role in the outcome of your binding also. I have found, and I may be making it a bit harder on myself with this particular bag because of the bulk thickness of it, but I have found that 2-inch wide works better for me. I found the 2 1/4, there was just always too much excess when it came to doing this part, and I couldn't really get a nice binding. 1 second. So I went down to a 2-inch and I found I've been getting better results. But other than that, it's just take your time, go slow, be mindful of where your stitching is to make sure that you're going to fall on the other side of it. And that's pretty much really all there is to it, to be honest. And practice. Really, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. That's what I've found. But in saying that, I will admit that now being on the industrial and having all this extra flat area here to hold the project has made the world a difference. With the domestics, being that they tend to usually sit on top of a table and then they drop away here, they don't sit flush, the bag hangs off and therefore gravity is working against you when you're trying to do your binding because you're struggling to hold it up. You're trying to keep precision. You only have two hands, you know. Be kind to yourself when you do your binding. Like, it is going to take time. Other than that, yeah, I will say having all this flat area so the project is on it, I don't have the weight of it drawing down, has made the world a difference. So, okay, enough of me babbling. Now back to the tools of the trade binding. When you come to the curve where the zip is, be mindful of your zip pull. So I'm going to come down just a little bit further, then I'm going to, because I've pinned the sides out of the way, so what I'll do is I will unpin it and then I will move that zip pull further up here where I've already been, so then that way it's not going to create an issue when I try and come around my corner here. Actually, I might even do it now. Yeah, I will. Okay, be right back. So I moved the zip pull out of the way and I'm just getting ready to go around this corner. Sometimes it feels like you need 8 arms. You can see here it's really thick, so I'm going to have to be very mindful of where my line is and make sure I get it past that. Here we go, guys, it's all done. Now we'll turn it to here. Slow and steady, everyone. It's the best advice I could give. Okay, so now we are up to attaching the bag back. There. looking everywhere for my wonder clips, and they're right there beside me. So I am thinking I'm going to put the bag back down on there, and I'm going to put this on top of it because this is lighter than the back. Let me see. You guys aren't zoomed in at all. Let me see if I can't get this a bit better for you. Maybe there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by matching my center with my center. Like that. And I might just stick one more either side of it. Bit of added strength there. Like so. And then I'm going to go to the corners. I'll go up here. Wonder if doing that might make it a bit easier. Yeah, a bit easier to maneuver that if you undo the side. So I'll stick one in this corner like that, and then the opposite corner. Oh, that popped off. Hang on a minute. Tuck the handle in there, get that out of the way. These bad boys, they'll hold anything, I reckon. There we go. Beautiful. So now I'm going to come to this corner. Clip that down. And then I'm just going to work my way along here, along all the edging, across the bottom, get it all clamped down, and then we can go and sew the two together. Really should trim that. I'm going to get in quickly, guys, and just trim this edge here. Just the strap. Something I didn't think to do, everyone, or tell you to check, was after we put on the padded sleeve, just check if there's any overhang on the edge there. Can you see that? Hang on. Put that out of the way. Okay. Now we just have the back there. Alright. See this? So you're going to want to trim that off. So I'm just going to quickly get in and trim that off, because you don't want it there, because that's going to create extra bulk in your binding, and because it sticks out so far, it's going to muck up your binding, something shocking. So we'll just go in and trim that off. There we have it. It's all clipped down. Fits beautifully. I must admit, this is it's coming together absolutely lovely. It's very enjoyable so far, a lot like running with scissors and take a stand and the catch-all caddy. I've loved all of those patterns, and this one is up there with them. So now I'm going to go and sew this down. It's totally sewn down now. All up the side. So now what we need to do is bind this section with our bias binding. What we'll do is, it's going to be a bit hard to try and show you guys here. What I'm going to do, we're getting a storm too. So what I'm going to do on the top edge here to be able to enclose all of this in is I'm going to leave it overhang about that much, which is about an inch overhang. We'll sew down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it down and we'll sew down all the way around and fold it over at the other end. Then what will happen when it comes time to fold this around is this will come over like we do normally, like so. I hope you guys can see that. So it's just coming over like normal. And we'll just fold this in, that down, and that over. And then the rest of the binding will go down like that. So that way we're enclosing the whole raw edge section up here and sewing it down. Alright, there is the binding done. Yeah, hold on. Alright, that's a bit better. You can see it a bit better. I feel it's easier to move the camera than the bag. Hang on. And now I'll just turn it to the other side. Went a wee bit wild just there. So you see what I mean? You just got to go slow, take your time. But like I said, most importantly, how you put it down the first time is the key. If you have too little, you're going to have too much excess come over the top. Like here. You see here? When I was sewing down the first side, I went out to more like a 1 inch seam. Now look at this. But because I was coming to the corner, it was a bit too hard to sort of go back and correct it by coming in more on my sewing, more to the 1/4 inch size. So I just thought, bugger it, and I left it. But then when you pull it over, see, this is what happened. you end up with too much. So I think the key is working out the width you need to cut it. For me, 2 1/4 is too much. And then just keeping a consistency when you initially sew it down, so then when you pull it around, you can pull it and get it just shy of that initial seam. All right. So lastly, what we need to do is just attach the flap. We're going to have to, because this is the large, it's so big, bend that up there to get it in the frame, and I can't even get all of it in the frame. Then what we need to do is have it so we have the back here, and then we just want to make sure it's the right side up. Don't, make sure you haven't got the lining up. You want the main fabric up, and then just stick it in there. I feel before we done the binding on the flat, right, how we had to curve these corners, I feel that before we done this, these corners here should have been angled a little bit. That is my honest opinion, because when you put it in, it bunches up like that, because of the fact that, yes, the flap strap goes all the way to the edge, but once you have the binding on there, that's 1/2 inch you've lost. And this wasn't trimmed 1/2 inch shorter than the back. This was trimmed to the same width. So you'll see what I mean when I put it in. Look, I'll move it over. I'll just get that end back in there, put a pin in that, keep it, because otherwise it'll pull out when I move it. You see already here, see that? So it is now in that far corner. You see what I mean? Look at that. I don't know. You pick up how folded that is. For that to sit flat, yep, we need a 1/2 inch fold over pleat, and that's going to look just horrid. Really is. So I've got to try and disperse that, but like in saying that, you're trying to squish something that is a 1/2 inch too big for the space into here, So in my opinion, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpick this to about here, and do the same to the other edge over there, and I'm going to angle that section. So I'm just going to trim it a little bit like that, then I'll bind it back down, and then I'll put it in. So I've unpicked the binding on that corner and that corner, and I'm just going to bend it this way so I can see it. And I'm just going to cut it on a bit of a curve. So taking about that much off. I'm going to do that on the other side. And I've done it sort of just above the line. This is the line where it goes into the flap strap. So it's a little bit above the line where I sort of started the gentle, like it's a very slight piece that I cut off here. This is where I actually make the difference in what I cut off. But it's under 1/4 of an inch that I cut off. I didn't mark it or anything, I just did it just what I think it would be. You see there's the line. Here's sort of, let me get my stiletto. Oh. So the line comes here, and I just sort of started it from here. Just a very gentle, that's a minute amount there, and this is where I took the difference off. So now I'll rebind these 2 corners, and then we'll see how it fits. Well, actually, I'll see how it fits now before I bind it. The binding's not going to make a difference much. Still a bit over. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to take more than that, because there's still, oh, it's smushed in there. Maybe pull it over that way. Yeah. Okay, let me mark that. Alright, I'm just going to take just a little bit more off. Just because it's sort of folded over itself on this corner here. It is quite like folded over and everything, and with the binding on there it's going to be that little bit thicker, and it's not going to conform as easily as what it does now without this stability here in it. So I'm just going to take a little bit more off, about 1/4 inch, just shy of 3/8. Let me see if I can get this to focus. Get that out of the way so it's not trying to focus on all these different things. There's the line there. So it's just shy of 3/8 above that line is where I am starting the angle to clip it on. So that's how much I've took off again. So all up, yeah, about 1/4 inch on a gradual slant, as you can see, and becoming more prominent when you actually hit that mark for the placement underneath the flap strap there. So I'll just take a little bit more off the other side too. we go. Now I'm going to get in and bind that down again, both sides, and then I'll stitch it in. So totally done, everyone. There it is, sewn back down. Now I'm going to stick it in the strap and then just sew down along this line of stitching just here. Then our bag will be complete. There we go, lovelies, all done. Look at how big that is. It is huge. Like, there's my hand. It's massive. One thing I will say is I think the large would be better with another magnet here. Right there. Because you got one here. And then you have another one there. But then this here sort of bubbles. And I feel one more would be better there. I was nearly going to put one on just to be safe. But I didn't. And I'm now regretting it. So, yeah, I honestly do feel that it could do with one more. Also, when you're sewing down your strap, look at how, hang on,